I clicked the button on the remote for the garage and watched as the metal door lifted up slowly. For some reason, this felt like a strange night. I didn't know why just yet, but something seemed off. I pulled the car into the garage and turned off the engine. Entering through the mudroom, I noticed the house was dead silent. Normally, my wife Emma would have the television on, or would be preparing dinner, or both. "Emma?" I ask, stepping further into the open concept main floor. No answer. The kitchen island is spotless, and I see Emma's phone on the counter. I don't usually invade her privacy, but for some reason, I pick it up and look at the screen. It's flashing with notifications from Colin M., my neighbor and friend, showing previews of a conversation. "Missing you already. Last night was..." I feel a pit in my stomach. I swipe up, and it opens without asking for a password. There's a long text message conversation between Emma and some guy named Colin. "I can't wait for you to touch me again," Emma had texted me not long ago. "Neither can I. David's at work until 6, right?" I looked at my watch. It was 5:47 p.m. Their last text message to each other had been sent at 5:30. I walked over to the stairs, feeling like I was moving through molasses. The walls were spinning, and I had to hold on to the staircase railing to not fall over. I thought about my wife, about our 14 years of marriage. A creak from the floor above, and then a giggle, made me stop in my tracks. "Emma?" I call out again, a little louder. The house is eerily quiet. I hear someone rushing, and then a door being closed. The door to the master bedroom, my bedroom. My phone buzzes in my hand. It's Colin again. He writes, "Text me when he's gone." I start to see the connections, the puzzle pieces falling into place. How come I didn't see it before? The late-night meetings, the tennis, the flirting with the neighbors. A door opens. I look up and see Emma standing at the top of the stairs. "David, you're home early," she says. Her voice has the same rehearsed warmth it always does. Now it just feels fake, like an acoustic tile covering up something rotten. "Traffic was light," I say. My voice sounds strange to me. "Everything okay up here?" "Of course, I was just..." She stops for a beat, almost unnoticeable. "Changing after my workout." I show her the phone, and at first she looks like she's about to deny it. "David, she begins. She takes a step down the stairs. Another. "I can explain," she says. "Oh, can you?" I respond. "Can you explain why our neighbor is texting you about last night? About me being at work?" She got to the bottom step and stopped. "It's not what you think." "Really?" I ask, scanning the texts, my heart dropping further with each new one. "Because this is definitely what it looks like." "How long, Emma?" She doesn't say anything. I hear a car door slam shut. It must be Colin making his escape through the back gate between our yards, the same gate I helped him install last year. "I'm sorry," she says, trying to grab my arm. I take a step back, bumping into the picture of our wedding day that hangs on the wall. "But that's the thing, isn't it?" I ask, wondering why I sound so calm. "You never mean to hurt anyone. You just do whatever you want and hope for the best." She looks out the window as she hears another car starting up. Her hands are twisting together, a sign of her nervousness. "Let's discuss this," she says, slipping into her conflict resolution voice. "We have to talk about..." "Talk about what?" I cut in, brandishing the phone again. "About how you've been fucking Colin? About how you two joke about it behind my back? About who else you've been sleeping with?" The way her expression changes, I can tell there is more. "David, please." She takes another step towards me, but I'm already on my way to the front door. I need to get outside. I need to get away. I need to clear my head without her and the stench of Colin's aftershave all over my furniture. "I'll be back," I tell her, though I'm not sure if that's true. "Maybe." "Where are you going?" Emma asked as I opened the door. I stepped out but called back to her. "To get some air. And keep your phone, Emma. I've seen enough." With that, I walked out into the cold November night. I heard her calling my name again, but I ignored it, getting into my car and driving away. I looked in the rearview mirror as I was backing out of the driveway and saw the curtains being drawn in Colin's upstairs window. I drove away without knowing where I was going. I just needed to get away. I needed to be alone for a while to think about what my next move would be. I knew this wasn't the end of it. I needed to find out the truth. I drove around aimlessly for hours, just going wherever the road took me. I crossed the city limits a couple of times, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be away from my house and my wife. I didn't know how long I drove, but it must have been for a long time because I eventually ran out of gas and had to stop at a gas station to fill up. By then, it was early morning, and I was exhausted. I knew I had to go back home at some point, but I didn't want to face Emma just yet. I needed to come up with a plan first. I needed to find out what was really going on. And to do that, I needed some help. I needed someone who could get to the bottom of this, and I knew just the person to ask. The first night I spent driving around until morning came, and the sun was rising over the rooftops of the nearby suburbs. When I came home, Emma was gone, off to work, according to the note she left me. I took the day off work, calling my boss to tell him I was sick. This was unusual for me, since I never took time off. But I didn't care. I needed to find out what was going on in my marriage, in my life, before I did anything else. The office of the private investigator was in a strip mall. I walked inside, and he waved me to a seat in front of his desk. "Marriage surveillance," he stated. Am I right? Is it that obvious? 20 years in the industry, Mr. Sterling. I can recognize a man who just found out his spouse cheated on him from a mile away. He looked up at me. What do you want to know? Everything, I told him, handing him an envelope with $5,000 in cash. I want to know everything. The next week was all about acting normally. I kissed Emma in the morning, drank coffee with her, and had small talk in the evening. It felt like drawing a replica of a picture you were already familiar with, but with a different perspective. Then, one day, I got a text message from Chen. Check your secure email. The first pictures were from when Emma was out for her book club. They showed Emma at 2:14 p.m., leaving the Meridian Hotel with Mark Henderson, a friend of ours for over a decade. He had his hand on her back. Her lipstick was a little bit smudged. Do you need anything from the store? Emma texted me at 2:17 p.m. that day. I'm on my way home from meetings. I texted him back. We're good. That was not true at all. Chen found out about everything. Tuesday afternoons with Mark, Thursday tennis lessons with Colin, late nights at the office with her boss, Lisa, which turned out to be late nights at her apartment, doing things that had nothing to do with work. I made a list of everything, in chronological order, using all the information I could find. Text messages, emails, and more. You're quiet lately, Emma said one evening over dinner, her fork pushing pasta around her plate. Everything okay at work? Just focused on the Henderson project, I replied, watching her reaction to Mark's name. Nothing. She'd gotten better at hiding tells over the years. Mark mentioned it's going well, she said casually. I ran into him at lunch yesterday. I took a sip of wine. Oh, really? Where? The new spot downtown? Italian? She answered. Too fast, too rehearsed. The Italian restaurant was closed for renovations. There was another lie. Chen's reports painted a detailed picture of everything. He followed my husband around, took pictures of him meeting with people, hacked his computer and phone, and more. It should have broken my heart to read it, but instead, I just felt more and more numb. David? Colin asked one morning when I was out getting the paper. Still on for golf this Saturday? I looked at the traitorous man who was smiling as he spoke. Awesome. Emma said you've been staying late at work. Hopefully you can get away. I wanted to crush the newspaper in my hands, but resisted the urge. There's always time for friends, Colin. The next email from Chen included a sound recording. It was a conversation between Emma and Lisa in Lisa's office after hours. David doesn't know, said Emma's voice. He's too busy with his work. She giggled. That's the beauty of it. Men never see the obvious. I listened to the recording again and again, forming a plan in my head. I needed to act smart. On Tuesday, I put up a few hidden cameras in the house. Not because I wanted to watch them, but because I needed proof. Working late tonight, Emma said Thursday morning. Don't wait up for me. I nodded, not looking up from my laptop where I was reading Chen's latest report, which revealed what she was really up to with Mark. Drive safe, I got a text from Mark. Still on for racquetball next week, I wrote back, looking forward to it. The evidence kept coming in. Photos, videos, audio recordings, a complete organizational chart of my wife's many affairs. Chen sent me her final report on a Sunday morning while my wife was at yoga, or, more accurately, at Colin's place. Your payment has gone through, I texted Chen. Nice work. He didn't hesitate. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said, staring out at the perfect lawn outside, the lawn that hid so much corruption beneath its surface. Emma came in and kissed me on the cheek. She had a yoga mat with her. Great morning for yoga, she said. Yeah, must have been a tough workout, I said, shutting my computer screen, which still showed the pictures of her actual morning. She went upstairs to take a shower, and I opened my password-protected folder, looking through the evidence I had amassed so far. I was building a case against them, and like a good architect, I was going to tear it all down when I was finished. I was getting closer and closer to the end. They were slipping up with their mistakes, and soon I would have enough to show them what happens when you fuck with an architect. But not yet. For now, I was still gathering evidence, still watching and waiting. Some things take time. Like a good building, they take planning and patience. The next 3 days went by in a flash. I continued to watch and gather evidence, taking the raw data and organizing it into folders, cataloging it by date and time. Every night after Emma went to bed, I would stay up late in my home office, trying to come to grips with what I had found. By Friday afternoon, I had everything I needed to put together a final presentation. The leather briefcase is open in front of me, and I'm sorting through the documents that were inside. I've been doing this for the last few hours, making a sort of catalog of all my wife's indiscretions. And Mark's, of course. There are hundreds of pictures of the two of them together, going to hotels, restaurants, and the evidence to go along with it. I've been organizing it all on my drafting table, using my skills as an architect to make everything look polished and professional. It looks like I'm working on a project, and I guess I am. Honey, you here? In my office, I reply, hurrying to stash the briefcase in my desk. She shows up in the doorway, her makeup immaculate except for a small smear on her collar which doesn't match her lipstick. Working from home? She asks, stepping into the room. Just sorting through a few things. That's my organized husband, she jokes. Or at least, I think it's a joke. Yeah, architects gotta make sure everything's in the right place, I respond, not looking back at her. I was thinking of cooking something for dinner, she continues. I'll be home late tonight, I say. She's going to see Lisa. I got Chen's report this morning with photos of their Thursday night routine. Oh, she looks almost relieved. That works out, actually. Lisa told me she's working late tonight. I nodded as if that made sense. There sure seemed to be a lot of those going around. End of quarter, she says with a shrug. You know how it is. I do, I reply, glancing back at the audio recordings in my drawer. I know how it is. She paused for a second. All right, I'll go get changed. Don't work too hard. I waited until she was gone, then went over to the briefcase and opened it. I went through the evidence again, sorting it into the different categories in my head. There was information about where some of the money had gone. There were emails, text messages, photos. There was footage from the parking garage at her office, showing her getting into Colin's car. And there was so much more. It was a mountain of evidence, and a mountain of lies. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Colin. Hey, is that you at home? I can see your car. Want to hang out? I couldn't believe he had the nerve to ask me that. No, I have to work. Sorry, I replied. I put my phone away and picked up a USB drive from the briefcase. It was a backup of all Emma's texts and emails from the last year, along with her entire search history. I had hired a guy recommended to me by Chen to hack into her computer. Someone knocked on the door. I put the USB drive back in the briefcase and closed it. It was Emma. Bye, honey, she says. Make sure you eat. I will, I say, thinking about Lisa's place in the city or the hotel room where she sometimes meets Mark. Love you, she says, already walking out the door. Love you too, I say back, testing out the words. When I heard her leave, I opened my laptop. I checked the tracking app and saw that she was heading downtown. She was going to Lisa's place. I opened a new folder and gave it today's date. My phone rang. It was Chen. Mr. Sterling, the man says, businesslike. We've got some footage from the office you might want to see. I'm listening. Her boss? It looks like he's been having late-night meetings with the chairman of the board. Your wife isn't the only one. I sat back in my chair and considered this. Send over the files. Sent to your secure email. Also, I found bank statements. It seems suspicious that some employees are getting paid more than the others. Could be useful for your predicament. I smiled to myself and opened them up on my computer. Thank you, Robert. This helps. I spent the next hour or so going through the new information. It wasn't much, but it was enough to fill in a few more gaps. I added it to my growing collection of evidence, and it felt like I was slowly building a case that would expose the truth and bring down the people who had wronged me. It was like constructing a building, piece by piece, until the entire structure was complete. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was an architect. I was used to working with complicated designs and making sure everything fit together perfectly. And now, I was using that same skill set to build a case against the people who had betrayed me. Each new piece of information was like a support beam, holding up the weight of my suspicions. And I would keep adding to it until the entire building came crashing down. Emma sent me a text message. Meeting running late. Don't wait up. I checked and saw that she was still at Lisa's apartment. She had taken a quick detour to Mark's office first, though. I added that to the list. The rest of the night I spent going through all the material I had collected so far. I made notes, organized it, and made sure everything was in order. It was a lot of work, but it was also satisfying. I felt like I was finally taking control of the situation, like I was finally doing something about it. It was like I was putting together a puzzle, and I was getting closer and closer to the final picture. I stuffed everything into a briefcase and locked it. If Emma found it, it would be hard to explain, but I would just have to make sure she didn't. I was careful, and I was used to keeping secrets. I just had to be extra careful now. I looked out the window at the houses across the street. One of them belonged to Colin. I wondered what he was doing right now. Probably watching TV, or maybe he was in his home office, working on something. I didn't know, and I didn't care. I just wanted him to pay for what he had done, for what they all had done, and I would make sure they did. I would make sure they all did. I received one last text from Chen. Full board meeting next Tuesday. All players will be present. Great, I say, placing my hand on the leather briefcase. Let's blow it up. I shut off the light in my office and my laptop and decided that tomorrow would be the day when I finally put my plans into action. For now, I'd let them sleep soundly in their beds, not knowing that their little charade was about to come crashing down. I had everything I needed. All that was left was to execute my plan. I was going to wait until Tuesday, but when I received an invitation to the Hendersons' party on Thursday morning, I saw it as a sign. The best time to expose them would be when everyone was gathered in one place. I waited until Saturday, and then, instead of putting the documents in my briefcase, I put them in a small folder and put the folder in my jacket. The Hendersons' party was a big enough event that most of our friends would be there, and I was sure it would work. I was driving to the party with Emma, which I thought was a bit funny. You're awfully quiet tonight, Emma says, adjusting her dress. Just tired, I respond, seeing her pick up her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Their house was lit up, and we could hear laughter coming from inside. Mark answered the door and shook my hand, then Emma's. David, Emma, right on time, he says, welcoming us in. I looked around, taking note of who was in the room. I need a drink, Emma says, making her way over to Colin. I head over to a group of wives standing around the appetizer table. David, Sarah Miller says, how's the Wilson project coming? Right on track, I reply, stepping into their circle. But there's been a few interesting developments lately. Oh, Catherine Bennett is already sniffing for details. I leaned in and lowered my voice so they would have to do the same to hear me. Have you noticed anything strange about Emma? Anything different? Now that you mention it, Sarah says, syrupy sweet. I let the conversation turn in a natural way, casually dropping a few hints here and there. A few subtle indications that their husbands had been up to no good and that their families may be in danger. Emma laughed at something Colin said, not realizing the seeds I was planting. Guess those tennis lessons are working, I say. Catherine turns to Colin, surprised. Tennis lessons? She says. I thought she was doing yoga every Thursday. I didn't say anything, taking a sip of my scotch. The rumors began to spread after that. I could see it happening, like a spider web of lies I'd spun, now beginning to take shape. Lisa and Emma were talking with each other, their closeness now gaining unwanted attention. Did you hear? I hear someone say as I pass by. And her boss, too, says another. Such long hours. That poor man, David. Mark's wife cornered me by the kitchen. David, if you ever need to talk to someone, she begins. Thank you, Jennifer, I respond, watching as she shoots an accusatory glance at her husband. The atmosphere of the party began to change. Emma didn't seem to notice it, but Colin did. People were ignoring him, cutting off conversations with him. How's it going? He says to me, trying to act friendly at the bar. Great, I respond. He takes note of the ice in my voice. Emma only begins to suspect something is wrong when Lisa makes an excuse to leave her side, and she finds herself standing alone. These crab puffs are to die for. Catherine says as Emma comes up to them. Sorry, private chat. I see her notice it. David, she approaches me at the hearth. I think there's something wrong with tonight. Is there? I look down at the ice in my glass. I didn't notice. A text message came through on her phone. I saw it was from Lisa before she turned it over so I couldn't see it anymore. Should we leave? She says, looking uneasy. But we just arrived, I reply, knowing it's already too late. Already? The night ends much like the construction phase. Emma makes a few awkward goodbyes, and people who used to be her friends find other people to talk to. Colin leaves early due to a headache. Emma doesn't say much on the way home. That was weird, she says at last. What was... People were... weird. She looks at me. Did you notice anything? I stared at the road, acting as if I was unfazed. People change, Emma, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But everyone shows their true nature eventually. She didn't say another word during the entire drive. I could see that she had a couple of missed calls, one from Lisa and one from her husband. When we arrived at home, I noticed a light was shining in Colin's house. Tomorrow, his wife would hear about Emma's tennis lessons. This was going according to plan. I think I'm going to have a bath, Emma says, and heads up the stairs the moment we're in the house. I poured myself a drink and sat down in my chair, taking out my phone. I had received a message from Chen. Phase 1 complete, ready for Tuesday. I smiled at the thought of the briefcase in my office and replied, yes, everything is going according to plan. Emma was speaking on the phone upstairs, probably trying to do some damage control. But once the social fabric is torn, it can never be fully repaired. It was only a matter of time before everything would come crashing down. I opened my laptop and started to work on the next phase of my plan. The party had only been the beginning. I needed to be prepared for Tuesday. I could hear Emma talking on the phone upstairs as I made my final preparations for the upcoming event. I stayed up late, going through the evidence over and over again. I was drunk enough to zone out from time to time, but I always returned to the same thought. What I had started at the party tonight would be finished soon. I just had to be patient. At around 3 a.m, after Emma had stopped making calls, I fell asleep in my chair. I woke up a few hours later when she closed the garage door. I heard her go to bed, but I didn't follow her. Instead, I stayed up, thinking about the events of the night. The garage door closes behind Emma's car as she goes inside. I wait until I hear the door to the master bath click shut before bringing out the briefcase from my secret compartment. I open it on the desk and pull out the documents. There are witness statements, bank records, photographs, and more. Everything has its own tab. Everything is ready. My phone vibrates. It's a text from Jennifer Henderson. David, I had no idea. Mark just confessed everything. I'm so sorry. I reply, these things happen. Take care of yourself. A minute later, another text. This one from Lisa Parker. We need to talk. Urgently. I don't reply. Instead, I open the manila folder with the text Legal Strategy written on it. It contains a business card from one of the best divorce attorneys in the city. Her name is Caroline Walsh. There are also a few pages of notes from our meeting. And the cheating stuff is enough to get us out of this mess, I remember Caroline saying. But the business stuff, that's the atomic bomb. I can hear Emma starting a bath upstairs, and I can hear her pacing around somewhere, probably calling other people, letting them know about the screw-up. I finish jotting down the last of my notes on the divorce papers. My phone rings. It's Colin. I let it go to voicemail, thinking it would make him sweat a bit. Hey, David? Emma asks from the top of the stairs. Where's my phone charger? Your desk drawer, I reply, moving the rest of the pictures of her and Mark over to a different folder, where you keep your tennis stuff. I stopped talking for a second. Found it, thanks. I took out the financial documents next. Caroline had told me it would ruin Emma's chances of getting her hands on my money. David? Emma calls out from the bedroom, wearing her bathrobe. What happened tonight? What do you mean? I reply, feigning the same ignorance I have for the past few months. Was everyone acting weird? Lisa won't pick up the phone. Jennifer's acting weird. I shrugged it off, hiding the papers under a folder. I didn't notice, probably just tired. Are you coming up soon? I have a few more things to wrap up here, I say, pointing to my desk. All right, don't stay up too late. She leaves the room, and I continue to look through the papers. I find our prenuptial agreement, and immediately my eyes are drawn to the infidelity clause. My phone vibrates. It's Mark again. We need to talk, man to man. I text back. We'll talk on Tuesday. A moment later, he replies, David, please, let me explain. I ignore him and instead check Chen's latest email. She's attached a video from one of the hidden cameras inside Lisa's office. It's a clip showing Emma and Mark kissing. Emma told me she had a yoga class that day. The sound of the bathwater being drained upstairs. Emma's phone is vibrating. Finally, I pick up the divorce papers. Everything is already set up by Caroline. I only have to sign them. Chen sends me another text. The chairman of the board will be there on Tuesday. I'll make sure everything is ready. Good, I say. Do it. I put everything back in the briefcase. I would take care of the professional side of things tomorrow. His private life would be destroyed as a consequence. I heard Emma leave the guest room and walk into our bedroom. David? Be right there, I respond, closing the safe with the briefcase in it. As I make my way up the stairs, I go through the schedule for Tuesday. Board meeting at 10 a.m., served with divorce papers at 11:30, press release at noon. By the end of the day, her marriage and her career will be over. When I enter the bedroom, she's already in bed, nervously looking at her phone. Is everything okay? I ask her, playing along one more night. Yeah, she says, without missing a beat. It's just work stuff. I laid down in bed next to her, making sure to give her some space. Is there anything I can do to help? She thought about it for a second. No, I'll figure it out. Her phone vibrated and she picked it up and turned it over. Good night, Emma, I say and turn off my lamp. Good night, she replies, unsure. I lie awake, listening to her fake snoring and watching her phone light up the ceiling every time she receives a new message. I'm not sure how much longer she will be able to keep up the charade, but I suspect it will all come to an end on Tuesday. I will take care of the last preparations tomorrow. Tonight, I just need to endure another night of pretending like nothing is wrong. I've been doing that for 14 years, so one more night shouldn't be too hard. It's poetic in a way. Her office is located in the same building where we met, and that's where I'm going to confront her. That's where I will put an end to all of this. I don't fall asleep until the first rays of sunlight enter our bedroom. I wake up early and leave the apartment before Emma gets out of bed. She thinks I'm going to a client meeting, but instead, I take the car and drive downtown to her office. I park in the visitors' parking lot and look at my watch. It's 9:10 a.m. I arrive at Emma's office building at 9:15 a.m., just after her first daily meeting, and make my way up to her floor. Her assistant isn't at her desk. I made sure of that. I knock on Emma's door. Yes, come in! Her voice is different, the voice she uses at work. I go inside and see her behind her desk, wearing her reading glasses and with her hair pulled back in the professional style she always had at work. She looks a little bit like the woman I married. David? She says, surprised. I wasn't expecting... Is everything all right? Yeah, just wanted to leave something for you, I reply in my most normal voice. She looked at the envelope in my hand, appearing curious, but also a bit unsure. What is it? I put the envelope down on her desk at a perfect right angle. Read it now, I tell him, not taking my seat. I'll wait. She paused, looking at me hesitantly. You're making me nervous. What is it? Open it up. She slid her letter opener through the seal and pulled out the first page. It looked like legal letterhead. I watched as her expression changed from confusion to disbelief, to horror, and finally to understanding. This is, she stammers, breaking character. Divorce papers, I say, and evidence. Her hands tremble as she turns the pages, and she goes pale as she sees the pictures, the transcripts, the bank statements. How did you... Doesn't matter, I say, calm and collected, like I'm talking to someone about their floor plans. What matters is that I saw it, all of it. Your meetings with Mark, your meetups with Colin, your time with Lisa. She winced at the names, and I saw the paper in her hands shake. David, I can... And the corporate account discrepancies? I cut him off coolly. You can explain those away as well, right? To the board? They should be here in... I glance at my watch. 45 minutes or so. She looked at me with renewed fear. You wouldn't... I did. The chairman has a pretty big file on his desk too, like yours, but with numbers. Emma stood up, looking panicked. This will ruin everything. Yeah, I just say. It will. She took a step toward me, reaching out her hand. We can talk about this. Work something out. I stepped back. There's nothing to work out. Just sign the papers. If you have any questions, have your lawyer contact Caroline Walsh. Caroline Walsh? She sounds like she's about to cry. You hired Caroline Walsh? Only the best divorce attorney in the city. I check my watch again. You have until the board meeting in... I look at my watch again. Half an hour to decide whether you're going to resign. She sat back down. You knew this whole time? I'm an architect, Emma. It's my job to notice things. Patterns. Flaws in the design. Her phone buzzes beside her, but she ignores it. 14 years, she says. That's right. I adjust my tie, feeling the need to look presentable. The movers will be at the house tomorrow. I'll stay at the Westin until the divorce is finalized. Tomorrow? She looks at me, tears running down her cheeks. Already? I had some time to prepare. You didn't. I start heading towards the door before turning back. Oh, and Emma? Colin's wife is getting the same paperwork delivered to her today. I think she had an appointment with your tennis coach. I hear her breathe in sharply as I open the door. David, don't... Bye, Emma. Quietly, I shut the door behind me and stepped out of the office. A few people were already looking around, wondering what had just happened. As I approached the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text message from Chen. Board members arriving early. Phase 2 ready. Go ahead, I reply, entering the elevator. I see Lisa running towards Emma's office, just as I had planned. 14 years of marriage is about to go down the elevator. I feel like a building, stripped of everything that has kept it standing for so many years, but relieved that I finally can start building something new. The elevator goes down, just like my marriage. I get off on the bottom floor and look out the window at the parking lot as the afternoon sun is setting. I have a long way ahead of me, but things are already in motion. It's just a matter of letting them fall down to the ground. The doors opened to the lobby, and I stepped out. I had already received a text message from Emma and a few missed calls from the other people involved in the project. As expected, panic had spread quickly. Emma's Tesla came racing into the parking lot outside the office. She parked it sloppily and hurried inside. I took a detour to give her a few minutes to get home. When I arrived at the house about 20 minutes later, the front door was open. It was a mess inside. Emma had turned the entire place upside down, and I could hear her ransacking the upper floor. Where are they? She calls from upstairs, frantic. I shut the door behind me, trying not to make too much noise. Where are what? I asked, stepping over a pile of unopened mail. My backup drives, she yelled down the staircase, her face smeared with makeup and tears, her laptop in her hand. Yeah, those are fine, I say, heading to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Unlike our marriage. You weren't allowed to touch those? She's coming down the stairs, trying not to raise her voice too much. Turns out I was. Community property laws. Really interesting stuff. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. It read, What have you done? At the same time, Emma's phone chimed with a similar message. Oh my God, she says. Lisa just got called to HR. I took a drink of my water and said, Interesting. David, don't... She approaches me, reaching out with her hands. Whatever you're going to do, I'm not going to do anything, Emma. It's already done. The doorbell rings, startling her, and I see a courier through the window holding an envelope. You should answer it, I say. It must be important. She opened the door, signed for the delivery, and accepted the envelope. It had her company's logo on the front of it. I'm being suspended, pending an investigation, effective immediately. She reads aloud, but with a blank expression. Corporate ethics violations are no joke. I glance at my watch. Lisa's probably getting the same news right about now. Suddenly, Emma's phone began buzzing with alerts. What did you give them? Everything. I put my empty glass in the dishwasher. All of your affairs with employees, all of your fraudulent expenses, all of your rule breaking. You've ruined me. No, Emma, you ruined yourself. I just gave them the proof. Her phone began to ring. It was Mark. She answered it and went into the living room. Mark, what's going on? Her voice cracks. They what? How did they? I heard him shouting from the other room about board meetings and ethics reviews. I went upstairs and packed an overnight bag. We wouldn't be getting the moving truck until the following day, but I didn't want to stay in that house another night. David! Emma yells, running up the stairs. The board's doing an investigation. They're talking to Mark, Lisa. They even brought in Colin for the consulting contracts. Good for them, I say, packing another shirt. You gave them everything, right? The pictures? The texts? Not everything, I say, closing my suitcase. Just a pattern of behavior that might be considered unprofessional. She checked her phone again, then sat down heavily on the bed. Lisa has been stripped of her title, she says, as of right now. The first of many. I look down at my phone. A text from Chen. The board has called an emergency meeting. What are you trying to do? I turn to look at her. Because there are consequences, Emma. The doorbell rings again. That's probably Colin's wife, I say, picking up my bag. She said she wanted to come over and talk about tennis classes. Emma ran downstairs while I took my time. Catherine, no, Emma's saying. You don't understand, Catherine interrupts. Explain what? How you've been sleeping with my husband? I walk down the stairs and into the hallway, where I see the two of them and Catherine holding her own photos. Hey, Catherine, I say cheerfully. I'm on my way out now. You knew, Catherine said, looking at both of us. He knew everything, Emma whispers. I get a notification from the HR department that my package has been received and is being reviewed. I should leave, I say, heading for the door. You two need to talk. David, it's Emma. Where are you going? Anywhere but here. I open the door and turn back. Oh, and Emma, you might want to check your email. HR tends to notify staff of their termination by end of day. I walked out of the house, leaving Catherine to argue with Emma about the lies she'd told. In my car, I opened my laptop and sent the last piece of evidence to the board. Emails which proved Emma and Lisa had been using company funds to pay for hotel rooms. A text came through on my phone. Termination confirmed. Freezing assets now. I started the engine, sitting and watching for a few more minutes through the front window. This was like watching a building being demolished. The work of architects and engineers being dismantled and destroyed by other architects and engineers. Each support beam being taken out one at a time until the whole thing came crashing down. I saw Colin running up to my house and realized Catherine must have called him. I left the scene behind, hoping that Emma would never recover from the destruction of everything she'd built. It was a sadistic sentiment, but I didn't care. My own wife, my own family, betrayed by her, and for what? So she could have more men in her life? To be desired by everyone? To be loved by no one? The next few days passed in a blur. I immersed myself in my work, the company providing a perfect distraction from the mess I'd made. I went to the office, not wanting to stay in my house anymore, and spent the weekend there in solitude. On Monday morning, I went back to work, still feeling the after effects of everything that had happened, but not knowing how to process it all. The Wilson project plans are spread out in front of me. It's been 3 days since I left Emma behind. I like being in the office. It's structured. The rules make it easy to avoid the mess I created for myself. My phone rings. It's Mark again. I check the time. He should be in his exit interview. Mr. Sterling? It's my assistant Sarah's voice at the door. The contractor for the East Wing renovations has arrived. Bring him in, I respond. I adjust my tie. Business as usual helps calm the nerves. A moment later, there was a knock at the door and Mike Peterson came in. There's a problem with the support beams, he said. I motioned for him to sit down and show me. We went over the blueprints together and I got lost in my work. It was nice to feel that certainty again, at least. If we support this section, I point with my finger, and change the way we carry it, my phone buzzed again. Emma's lawyer. Hey, you all right? Mike asks, noticing I'm a little out of sorts. Yeah, sorry, personal stuff. The reinforcement steps. Sarah reappeared, this time with a blank expression on her face. Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Henderson is here to see you. Thanks, Sarah. Can you give me 5 minutes, Mike? Sure. Jennifer was standing in the hallway. She looked tired. David, she says, fiddling with her wedding ring, I wanted to say thank you. For what? For showing me the truth about Mark, about everything. I sat down in the chair Mike had just vacated and asked him how he was doing. I asked for a divorce yesterday, she says, plopping herself down. Mark's been crashing at his brother's. I'm sorry, I say, even though I'm not. Don't be. I had to find out. She sits up straight. Lisa's fired, and now Emma is too, as of this morning. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. A high-profile firm like ours couldn't afford a scandal like this. Did you talk to any of them? Jennifer asks. I blocked their numbers. I saw a text from Colin's wife come in and turned my phone over. They're talking about it at the country club, Jennifer goes on. Colin's membership is under review. I go back to the Wilson blueprints, making some small changes here and there. Kids can be cruel. David? Jennifer asks gently. Was it all worth it? Destroying everything? I look up at her. Ask me in a year. Sarah knocks again. Mr. Sterling? The structural engineer is online too. Okay. I think I'm going to leave now, Jennifer says, getting up. I felt like you needed to know you're not the only one dealing with this. After she leaves, I sit and look at the blueprints for a long time. Then my phone buzzes again, and I see it's Emma's sister trying to reach me. Mike comes back and we get back to work. David, I hear Sarah call out to me hours later. It's almost 8. You want me to order dinner? I looked around and saw it was getting dark out. No, I'm on my way out. I packed up my things and left. The office was emptying out for the day, but there were still a few people around. I walked out to the parking garage and saw Lisa's Audi parked in her spot. It hadn't been moved since her suspension. Her car would probably be towed soon, I realized. As I got to my car, I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket. It was Chen. Mr. Sterling, just wanted to inform you. Emma, she's staying at her sister's place now. The movers? Everything's in storage except what she packed. The house is clear. I turned the ignition key and started the car. Anything else? Mark Henderson's wife hired Caroline Walsh as well. What are the odds? Yeah. I glance at my mirrors, almost reflexively. Let me know what you find. The drive home was longer than usual. Not home, the hotel. I needed to get used to calling it that. I started reading the Wilson plans as soon as I got to my suite. I didn't have anything better to do anyway. I got a text from Jennifer. Dinner tomorrow? Just friends. I thought about it. Maybe next week, I reply, typing, deadlines. There wasn't anything else for me to do. I returned to my drawings. At least they made sense. At least they were honest. I would have to ignore her calls tomorrow. I would have to try to figure out how to deal with all of this. But for now, I had my drawings and my peace and quiet. After spending the rest of the night working on the Wilson plans, I had to leave the hotel room. I took a quick shower, changed my clothes, and drove to the HOA meeting. It was something I usually stayed away from, but today there were more reasons than one for me to attend. I arrived at the HOA meeting and took a seat near the back of the crowded community center. My laptop case was by my feet, and I felt the USB stick in my pocket. It felt like I was ready to blow up a building and was connected to the detonator. Colin was up at the front of the room going through the usual boring details of what needed painting, cutting, and replacing. And as for the playground upgrades, he says, projecting the confidence of a man who's lying, we're soliciting estimates. I pulled out my laptop and opened it up, and as I did I saw Catherine Matthews sitting a few chairs in front of me without her husband at her side. Yeah, Tom Bradley, second row. The tennis court resurfacing. Wasn't that planned for last month? Colin hesitated for a second. Yes, well, there were some scheduling conflicts with the contractor. I sent the first email. A few seconds later, a notification sound went off, followed by another one, and another one. A woman let out a surprised gasp. A few rows in front of me, another woman went rigid in her seat. Can we get back to business? Says Colin, but everyone's focus has already moved on. There's murmuring all around, like cracks forming in a weak foundation. Jesus Christ, someone is saying. Is this some kind of joke? It wasn't until Catherine got her text that I began to worry. New business, Colin says now, louder, as if pleading. I have new business, Catherine says, standing up. Colin, care to tell us what these pictures are all about? He looked like a deer in the headlights. What pictures? The ones of you and Emma Sterling together at the Meridian Hotel, on numerous occasions. The room went completely silent. Everyone looked at Colin, then at me. I kept typing. Catherine, honey, this isn't the time or place. When is the time or place? She raises her phone. During your tennis lessons? Another round of cell phones started to buzz and hum. So that's why my court resurfacing was delayed? Asks Tom Bradley. You had other private lessons to attend to? Colin is losing his professional demeanor, becoming angry. These accusations are... There's video, Jennifer Henderson interjects, holding up her phone. Surveillance footage from the hotel lobby. I turned off my computer and sat back, watching the carnage I'd created. Colin looked up at me, suddenly realizing what I was doing. You, he says, but the mic picks it up. David, what did you do? I think, I say, knowing everyone will hear me. I just let the people know what they needed to know. Catherine chuckled bitterly. Relevant, you say? How about the stolen HOA funds? Colin paled. That's not... the follow-up email has some audit stuff, I suggest. Page 4 is a good read. There was another vibration from the phones, a third wave. Motion to remove Mr. Matthews from the board, says Sarah Miller, trembling with rage. Seconded, a few people reply, but Colin was already standing up, holding on to the podium like a drowning man. This is a witch hunt. You can't just... All in favor, Catherine says, her voice a mix of iron and hurt. A few more hands go up. I tentatively put my hand up as well, the last piece of the puzzle. Motion passes, Jennifer says, slipping into her lawyer mode. As of now. Colin looked around at the hands, his face crumbling. This isn't... I have to go. He turned to leave, but Catherine called out to him. Don't come back, she says. Your shit will be on the lawn. I close my laptop and get ready to go, as others begin to notice something is wrong. People are gathering in groups, checking their phones, and talking out loud about the awful things they've just learned. Colin's entire life is about to unravel. David, Jennifer says to me as I leave. That's an engineering marvel, I reply. You just gotta remove the right piece. A few minutes later, I received a message from Emma on my phone. How could you? Jennifer saw the text and didn't say anything. What now? She asks. I glance back at the room where Colin's empty podium stands like a tombstone over his buried reputation. What's next? I glance at the time on my wrist. Next, we wait for the building to finish collapsing. That shit takes a while. I hear the sound of Colin's car screeching out of the parking lot as I head out of the building. Walking to my car, I take my time, as if pacing off the distance to make sure it's just right. There are a lot of people texting and calling me, wanting to know why I did this. I ignore them all, feeling content to go home and reflect on the way my work has once again resulted in a controlled demolition of Emma's life. Tomorrow there will be more to deal with, but for tonight, I'm satisfied to watch her world burn down around her, knowing the cause of it all was my painstaking architecture. 3 days passed as I waited to see the impact of my latest social experiment. I could see the fallout of it in my morning commute as I watched the neighborhood react. The gossip spread like wildfire, and by the time I got back to work on Wednesday, the dust had already settled into a new normal. That evening after the meeting, I sat in my office and read through all the emails that came in. There were a lot of them. Some people were happy, some were less so. There were even a few who were going to have to move since their wives were leaving them and they could no longer afford to live there. I didn't care. The truth was the truth. If it destroyed some marriages, that was not my problem. I deleted every last email after reading them, then sat back in my chair, feeling satisfied. My phone had been ringing non-stop since the meeting, and I could see Emma had called a dozen times already. I set it to Do Not Disturb mode and began looking through the blueprints for the Wilson project again, trying to take my mind off of the day's events. A few minutes later, Catherine Matthews showed up at my door. The movers just left about an hour ago, she says. Colin's stuff is out. Have a seat, I say, pointing to the chair opposite me. She sits down. I found more, David. Credit card statements, burner phones. It wasn't just Emma. I know, I say flatly. I got Chen's report. How do you do it? She asks. Seems so calm? Years of practice and good schematics. My phone rang again. Still Mark Henderson's lawyer, but I muted it and ignored it. Emma's sister checked in on me, she says, gauging my response. Emma's having a tough time being cut off like this. Not our problem. No, I guess it's not. Catherine sits up. The country club board's meeting tomorrow. There are a few memberships being reassessed. I nodded. Yeah, society can be pretty brutal. David, she pauses. Thanks for opening my eyes. My phone rang. It was the security desk in the lobby. Mr. Sterling, your wife is here, demanding to speak with you. Looking at the intercom, I press the button for my assistant. I'm in a meeting. Please remove her from the building. She's getting desperate, Catherine said, raising her eyebrows. Desperation after a reveal, I draw a line on the map, like collapse after demolition. Emma's voice could be heard getting closer, despite the protests of security. David, she says, you need to speak to me. Catherine got to her feet. I should leave you to it. Stay, I ask, if you don't mind a little company. Emma came in the door, and a moment later the security guards were behind her. Her hair was messy, and her makeup was smeared. Mr. Sterling, we're sorry, one of the guards says. It's okay, I say. Mrs. Sterling was just leaving. David, please, Emma is saying. Everything is collapsing. Lisa hasn't returned my calls. Mark's wife is seeing Caroline Walsh. The club is... Actions have consequences, I reply, not looking up from my sketches. The first rule of design, integrity. Look at me, she shouts. I didn't look up. I didn't want to see. And I didn't need to anyway. What for? I asked, because the building was done coming down. Catherine, Emma says, seeing her for the first time. I'm so sorry about Colin. Are you? Catherine asks icily. Sorry about the affair, or sorry you got found out? Both. Everything. David, can we please talk in private? No, I say, looking back down at my plans. We're done. I have nothing, she says. You broke it. I just wrote about it. My phone buzzed again. It was Chen, giving me his daily update. And I guess your sister has a full house now, I say. With Lisa staying over. Emma's facade broke. How do you know you're still watching us? Just doing my job. I make sure everything's stable after I knock it down. Catherine stands up and says, I should actually go. Emma, goodbye. We watch her leave. Emma stays behind, looking like a house about to collapse. The papers are finalized. Caroline needs your signature. David, escort Mrs. Johnson out, please, I say into the intercom. This meeting is over. The guards came to take her away. She went with them willingly. Mr. Sterling? Sarah is at the door. Do you want me to cancel your other meetings? No. I adjust my tie. The Wilson project isn't going to design itself. I went over to the window to watch Emma's car leave the parking lot. A minute later, my phone buzzed again with a text from Jennifer Henderson. It said, Just heard about Emma's meltdown. You okay? Fine, I reply, watching the dust settle. The sun is setting, and I can almost see the shadows of the buildings as if they were the columns in my office. Tomorrow, I will have to deal with the aftermath of what happened today. But tonight, I will stay in my office, alone, and work late on my drawings. I need to build my world back up again. And that's what I did. Winter turned to spring, and gradually, the memories of that night in October faded. I returned to my work and my routines, and the months passed. In March, my firm moved to a new high-rise. From my new office, which is 20 stories higher than my last one, I can barely see my old building. And just like that building, what happened back then is beginning to feel like a distant memory. Sunlight pours in through the large windows of my office. I'm busy working on a new project, the Martinez residence. It's been 6 months since my life was demolished. As with any new construction, it took time for the dust to settle before you could begin building again. My phone rings. It's Jennifer. You down for dinner tonight? Her message says. That new spot on 4th? I take a look at the invitation and think about it. We've been having dinner together a lot lately. 7:30? I answer and go back to my sketches. Sir, the contractors for the East Wing modifications are here. Show them in. The construction workers led by Mike Peterson walk inside. We look at the blueprints together as we discuss the replacement of the support beams and the redistribution of the load on the house. It's a welcome distraction after everything I've been through. These changes, Mike says, running a calloused finger along the line, will ensure the building is sturdier than it was before. Yeah, I reply, considering my own reinforced structure. Sometimes it has to be. I got an email from Chen. It was his usual monthly update on what had happened after I'd left. I'd read it later. David? Sarah re-enters. Catherine Matthews called. She's been offered a spot in Seattle. I nodded, not entirely surprised. Some buildings needed to be moved to an entirely different location. After the construction workers left, I gazed out the window, looking down at the city. I saw my own reflection. I was still the same man, still a man of precision and calculation, but without the burden of revenge. Lunch? Jennifer asks, peeking her head into my office. She's wearing a sharp charcoal gray suit, just like mine. 1 second, I tell her, scribbling on my blueprint for a moment longer. Of course, she says, taking her usual seat. Burglary reconstruction is a fine art. Caroline Walsh called me earlier, by the way. It's official. Emma signed the papers. I made one last line on the blueprint. Good. Are you all right? Yeah, more than all right. I put my pencil down. Want to grab some food? The restaurant isn't crowded, and our table is secluded enough to give us some privacy. Jennifer looks over the menu, and I look at her. Her hair looks reddish in the sunlight, and her shoulders are relaxed. Hey, I drove by your old house yesterday, she says. Looks like someone else is moving in. The Andersons, I confirm. A couple, first-time homebuyers. The guy works in software, his wife is a music teacher. You did a background check? Force of habit. Gotta make sure the place is sound. She touched my hand, a soft caress. And what about your structural integrity, David? Stronger. I reach up and shake her hand. Fixed with care. Check this time? And better parts. I smile, feeling a bit more comfortable smiling now. No cheap parts. I got another message from Chen. Emma had moved across the country. Lisa had moved to Chicago, and Colin's real estate license had been temporarily suspended. The ripples were continuing outwards, but they were growing weaker as they spread. Maybe, Jennifer says, we should thank them. Thank them? For pointing out the flaws before it all fell apart, for giving us a chance to do it right. I thought about that, wondering if she was right. Perhaps, but I like to think about the new design specs. And what are the specs? The waiter came over with our meals and gave me a chance to think about what I wanted to say. When he left, I looked Jennifer in the eyes. Clear windows, sturdy foundation, routine upkeep. She laughed at that. Architectural for sure. Yeah, I say. This is my expertise. Buildings tell the truth. Yeah, she says, holding my hand. They do. We walked back to the office together after lunch. We're still good for dinner tonight, she asks, as we pull up to the building. 7:30, I reply. I'll come get you. When I return to my office, I open Chen's report and read about Emma's sister's guest room and Mark's brother's couch. They're both empty now. The mess has been cleaned up, and life goes on. I look at the Martinez blueprints for a while. No more messages are coming in, but I don't mind. It's a relief. Sarah comes in with some contracts I need to sign. Another project. Another building to construct. Another foundation to build. The Andersons' closing documents came in, she says. They're really looking forward to their new home. I scribble my signature in the designated spots. That's nice, I say. New beginnings are important. I get back to work, sketching out plans for a new community center. The support beams need to be perfectly positioned, or else the whole thing will fall apart. I work until the end of the day, then pack up my things. Time to go meet Jennifer. Time to start fresh. This time with honesty and integrity. I drive through the city and look up at the skyline. All of the buildings are standing up straight and tall. None of them are leaning. None of them look like they're about to fall over. I like it that way.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. but that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully." Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their IN. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, We're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident, especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.